The sun rose over Heartland, casting a golden glow over the ranch as Amy Fleming stood near the barn, watching Lindy play with the horses. It was one of those quiet mornings that made her feel at peace, yet there was always something lingering in the back of her mind, a sense of change, an unease she couldn't quite explain. Life had moved on, but some wounds never truly healed. Ty's absence was one of them. Even after all these years, his memory was everywhere. In the rustling trees, the sound of hooves against the ground, and in the way Lindy's eyes held the same depth as his. Lou arrived shortly after, carrying 2 cups of coffee and handing one to Amy. She leaned against the fence and watched Lindy with a soft smile. "She's growing up so fast," Lou said, her voice tinged with nostalgia. "I can't believe she's already asking about riding solo." Amy chuckled, but there was a hint of sadness in her expression. "She's just like him," she admitted, fearless, determined. So much of Ty is in her. Lou hesitated before speaking again, sensing the emotions beneath Amy's words. "And Nathan?" she asked cautiously. "Have you talked to him about the future?" Amy sighed, taking a sip of her coffee. Nathan had been patient, understanding, and kind. Everything she could have asked for. But something held her back. She had started to imagine a future with him, for herself and for Lindy. It felt right, or at least she thought it did. But love wasn't just about logic, and her heart still carried the weight of the past. Before she could answer, a truck pulled into the driveway, dust rising in its wake. Jack stepped out of the barn, narrowing his eyes at the approaching vehicle. Amy felt a strange, unshakable sensation in her chest, as if something significant was about to happen. The door of the truck opened, and for a moment, time stood still. The air seemed heavier, the sounds of the ranch fading into silence. Amy's breath caught in her throat as the figure stepped out, his silhouette familiar yet impossible. Her heart pounded violently, her hands trembling as she took a step forward, unable to believe what she was seeing. Ty Borden stood before her, alive. Jack's face went pale, his usual steady composure wavering. Lou gasped, covering her mouth in shock. Lindy, oblivious to the tension, looked curiously at the man everyone was staring at. But Amy felt as if the ground had been pulled from beneath her feet. For years, she had grieved, struggled, and tried to rebuild her life, believing that Ty was gone forever. Now, he was here standing in front of her, as if he had never left. Silence stretched between them, thick with emotions too heavy to name. Ty's gaze was filled with longing, guilt, and something deeper, something broken yet desperate to mend. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out at first. Finally, he managed to say, "Amy, I'm home." Home. The word felt foreign coming from him, like a cruel joke. Anger, shock, pain, love, all of it swirled within her, clashing in a storm she couldn't control. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, you don't get to say that." Her voice trembled, but her resolve was steady. "You don't get to walk back into our lives like nothing happened." Ty swallowed hard, his jaw tightening. Amy demanded, her voice rising. "Where were you all these years, Ty? Do you have any idea what you put us through?" Her eyes burned with unshed tears, the weight of every lonely night, every moment of heartbreak crashing over her. "Lindy grew up without you. I mourned you. I tried to move on. And now you just show up?" Jack finally stepped forward, his voice rough with restrained emotion. "You better have a damn good explanation, son." Ty looked at them all, Jack, Lou, and finally Amy. His eyes landed on Lindy, who was watching him with wide, innocent eyes. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I never wanted to leave, but I didn't have a choice." Amy shook her head, turning away. Her hands gripped the fence as she tried to steady herself. Lou was the first to break the silence. "That's not good enough, Ty. You were presumed dead. We buried you in our hearts. Do you have any idea what that did to us?" "I know," Ty said, his voice filled with regret. "I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." Amy turned back, her blue eyes filled with a storm of emotions. "You can't just expect us to forgive you," she whispered. "I don't," Ty admitted, "but I need you to know the truth." Lindy finally spoke, her voice small but clear. "Are you my dad?" Ty's breath hitched, his eyes softening as he crouched to her level. "Yeah," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm your dad." Lindy studied him for a long moment, then looked up at Amy, as if waiting for her approval. Amy felt her heart shatter into a million pieces. This was the moment she had both feared and longed for, the day Lindy would meet her father. Jack exhaled deeply. "I think we all need answers." Ty nodded, his face grim. "I'll tell you everything, but it's not what you think." Amy's heart pounded in her chest. She had spent years believing she knew the truth, but as she looked into Ty's eyes, she realized whatever had happened to him, whatever had kept him away, it was far from simple. And it was about to change everything. Silence hung heavy over Heartland, the weight of Ty's return pressing down on everyone. The wind rustled through the trees, the horses in the distance shifting uneasily, as if they too sensed the storm brewing. Amy stood rigid, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, trying to steady her racing heart. She had imagined so many scenarios where she might see Ty again, dreams where he was still alive, nightmares where she lost him all over again. But never had she prepared for this moment, for the reality of him standing right in front of her. Jack was the first to break the silence, his voice usually so calm and steady, now holding an edge of restrained emotion. "Start talking, Ty. Now!" Ty took a deep breath, his hands clenched at his sides. His gaze flickered to Lindy, who stood beside Amy, staring at him with a mix of curiosity and confusion. She looked so much like him. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He had missed years of her life. "I know I owe you all an explanation," he said finally, his voice low and rough, "but I need you to believe me when I say I never meant to leave." Amy let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. "That's not good enough, Ty. That's not even close to good enough." Lou, who had been standing beside Jack, her arms folded, finally spoke. "Ty, you were declared dead. We grieved for you. Amy had to pick up the pieces of her life, and Lindy had to grow up without a father. And now, after all these years, you just show up and expect us to listen?" Ty's jaw tightened. "I don't expect anything, but if you let me explain, maybe you'll understand." Amy's breath was shaky, but she nodded. "Fine, explain." Ty glanced at Jack, then lower back at Amy. "After the taking pictures, I awakened in a hospital. But I wasn't in Hudson." His voice changed into consistent. However, the ache in his eyes was unmistakable. "I turned into taken someplace else, someplace off the grid. I don't do not forget lots from the one's first few days. Just ache, confusion, and then nothing. When I subsequently came to, I turned into advised I couldn't pass returned, that it wasn't safe." Amy frowned. "Safe from what?" Ty hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "There were people who didn't want me to survive that day, and if they knew I was alive, they would have come after me. And after you." Amy's blood ran cold. "Are you saying someone tried to kill you?" Ty exhaled slowly. "I don't know exactly who was behind it, but I do know that if I had come back, I would have put you and Lindy in danger. So I stayed away." Jack's fist tightened at his sides. "You expect us to believe that?" Ty met Jack's gaze, his voice filled with quiet desperation. "I had no choice. The only way to keep Amy and Lindy safe was to disappear." Amy's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to scream, to tell him he was lying, that nothing could justify the years of pain and loss. But something in his eyes, something raw and broken, made her hesitate. Could it be true? Had he really stayed away to protect them? Lindy, who had been silently absorbing everything, finally spoke. "You're my dad?" Her voice was small, hesitant, but it shattered the tension in an instant. Ty crouched down to her level, his voice thick with emotion. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm your dad." Lindy studied him for a long moment, her little brows furrowed. Then, to everyone's shock, she took a small step forward and touched his face. "You don't look like the pictures." A choked laugh escaped Ty, his eyes glistening. "I know, it's been a long time." Amy turned away, her emotions threatening to consume her. This was too much. Just hours ago, she had been thinking about her future with Nathan, trying to move forward. And now, Ty was here, alive, standing in front of her, telling her that everything she had believed was a lie. Nathan. The thought hit her like a wave of guilt. He had been patient, kind, understanding. He had been the one helping her heal, the one who had been there for Lindy when she needed a father figure. And now, just as she was about to take the next step with him, Ty had returned. Lou, sensing Amy's turmoil, spoke again. Ty, even if what you're saying is true, it doesn't change the fact that Amy and Lindy had to live without you. That pain doesn't just go away. Ty stood up, his gaze locked on Amy. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me, Amy, but I need you to know I never stopped loving you, not for a second. Amy's breath hitched. She wanted to believe him, but love wasn't enough. Not anymore. Jack finally sighed, running a hand over his face. You're staying in the guest cabin tonight. Amy swallowed hard, nodding. She couldn't process this right now. She needed space. Ty turned to her, his voice soft. I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Amy met his gaze, her heart aching. I don't know if you can. As she walked away, Lindy glanced back at Ty one last time before following her mother. Ty stood there, watching them go, knowing that this was only the beginning of the hardest battle of his life, the fight to earn back the trust of the family he had lost. The night was long and sleepless for Amy. Every time she closed her eyes, memories of Ty flooded her mind. His laughter, his touch, the way he used to look at her like she was his entire world. And now, after all these years, he was back, alive. But the man standing before her wasn't the same person she had lost. He was different, changed, and she wasn't sure if she could ever trust him again. The early morning sun cast a golden glow over Heartland as Amy stepped out onto the porch, a cup of coffee warming her hands. From a distance, she noticed Ty close to the guest cabin, sitting on the steps, staring out at the significant landscape. He gave the look of a man haunted via his past, through the choices he had made. Jack joined Amy, his expression unreadable. Couldn't sleep? Amy shook her head. Every time I close my eyes, I pay attention to his voice. I see him, and I don't realize if it's actual or if it's just my heart gambling tricks on me. Jack sighed, rubbing his hands collectively. I don't believe him, but I recognize one factor. You deserve answers, and so does Lindy. Amy tightened her grip on her cup. Lindy, she doesn't apprehend what's occurring. She's only a little female, Jack. How do I even begin to explain this to her? Jack located a reassuring hand on her shoulder. You inform her the fact. That's all you can do. Amy exhaled slowly earlier than making her manner in the direction of Ty. As she approached, he seemed up, his face tired, however hopeful. I didn't assume you'd need to talk to me, Ty stated, standing up. Amy saved a safe distance, her voice corporation. I don't realize what I need, Ty. However, I do know that Lindy deserves the truth. And so do I. Ty nodded, his gaze looking hers. Ask me something. I won't hide something from you. Amy hesitated, then took a deep breath. You stated you stayed away to shield us, but how do I recognize that's the fact? How do I know you didn't simply give up on us? Pain flashed across Ty's face. I in no way gave up on you, Amy. Not for a single second. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in his posture. I desired to come back lower back every day. I fought to find a manner, but those who did this to me, they made certain I couldn't. Amy crossed her hands. Who are they, Ty? Who did this to you? Ty's jaw clenched. I don't realize their names. However, I know they had been related to the shooting. The folks that tried to kill me that day weren't just random criminals. They're turned into something bigger at play. Amy felt a chill run down her backbone. Bigger? Like what? Ty hesitated before answering. I think it needed to do with the land dispute, the one that nearly priced you and Jack the ranch. Amy's heart pounded. That dispute had almost torn their circle of relatives aside, however, may want to it clearly be connected to what had happened to Ty. Before she should respond, the sound of approaching footsteps caught their interest. Amy. She became to look Nathan's status some toes away, his expression unreadable. His presence by myself made her chest tighten. He had been her rock, the person she had slowly begun to believe, the only who had helped her flow forward, and now the whole lot turned into unraveling. Nathan, Amy stated, her voice calm, however, organization. Can we speak? Ty straightened, his protecting instincts flaring. I suppose Amy and I were within the middle of something. Nathan's eyes met Ty's, and the tension among them became palpable. I apprehend that you have unfinished enterprise right here. However, Amy isn't the handiest one who has been affected by your disappearance. Amy stepped between them, retaining up a hand. Stop. Both of you. She grew to become to Nathan. What is it? Nathan exhaled. I need to realize in which we stand, Amy. Before all of this occurred, we had been planning a future collectively. I was geared up to take the following step. And now, the whole lot has changed. Amy's throat tightened. Nathan had been nothing, however, patient and understanding, but how ought she deliver him an answer while her complete world had simply became the other way up? I don't recognize Nathan, she admitted, her voice slightly above a whisper. I don't understand what's right anymore. Nathan's expression softened, but there was pain in his eyes. I love you, Amy, but I received it compete with a ghost. Ty's fist clenched at his aspects. I'm now not a ghost. Nathan's gaze didn't waver. You were, for a long term. Amy felt the weight in their feelings crashing down on her. She had spent so long getting to know to stay without Ty, to just accept that he became gone. And now she became being requested to pick out between the affection she had misplaced and the affection she had started out to build. Before she may want to respond, Lindy's small voice reduced through the tension. Mommy. Amy grew to see Lindy standing inside the doorway, her eyes wide and unsure. Nathan took a step lower back. I should pass. Amy nodded, silently thanking him for know-how. She then crouched right down to Lindy's level, brushing a strand of hair from her face. What is it, sweetheart? Lindy glanced at Ty earlier than looking again at her mom. Can I speak to him? Amy's breath hitched. She checked out Ty, whose eyes had been filled with emotion. Of directions, sweetheart, Amy said softly, stepping apart. Ty knelt down, his voice gentle. Hey, Lindy. Lindy hesitated before taking a step closer. Did you without a doubt love Mommy? Ty's eyes glistened. More than anything in this global... Lindy bit her lip. Then why did you go away? Ty swallowed difficult, his voice thick with remorse. Because I notion I became keeping you each secure, but I become incorrect. Lindy studied him cautiously earlier than taking another breakthrough. Then, to anybody's wonder, she reached out and touched his hand. Are you going to go away again? Ty shook his head, his voice breaking. No, sweetheart. I'm right here to live. Amy watched the exchange, her heart aching. She desired to trust him. She desired to believe that they might, by hook or by crook, rebuild what became misplaced. However, deep down, she knew not anything might ever be the identical once more. The weight of Ty's return hung over Heartland like a typhoon cloud, moving the dynamics of every dating, each conversation, each quiet moment. Amy found herself caught between lives, the only she had mourned for years, and the only she had commenced to rebuild. But there has been no smooth route ahead, no simple answers. Best the aching pull of the past and the uncertainty of the destiny. Ty had promised Lindy he turned into staying, that he wouldn't leave again. However, words were fragile matters, and Amy had spent too long getting to know to stay without him to virtually accept as true with them now. Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt in a single day. It needed to be earned. The morning was crisp as Amy led Spartan via the pasture, letting the acquainted ordinary of working with the horses clear her thoughts. But at the same time as she moved, she felt Ty's presence earlier than she saw him. He became status by using the fence, looking her with the identical quiet depth that used to make her heart race. Now, it most effective made it pain. You nonetheless trip a door, it's the simplest area you feel loose, he stated softly. Amy didn't turn to stand him. Maybe due to the fact it is. A lengthy silence stretched among them earlier than Ty sooner or later spoke once more. I recognize I don't deserve forgiveness, Amy. I recognize I broke you. She closed her eyes for a second, swallowing the lump in her throat. It wasn't just me you broke, Ty. It became Lindy. It turned into my own family. It was everything. Ty took a step nearer. I want to fix it. I don't know how, but I want to attempt. Amy turned to him then, and for the primary time, he saw the total depth of her ache. And what if I don't need you to? The phrases hit him like a bodily blow. He had expected anger, even resentment. However, listening to her doubt whether or not she even wanted him lower back was something else absolutely. Before he could reply, the sound of a truck pulling up the driveway stuck their interest. Amy's coronary heart clenched when she noticed Nathan step out. Nathan had continually been regular, a supply of quiet energy, and now, as he walked in the direction of her, she realized how a great deal she had come to rely upon that balance. "I need to speak to you," Nathan said, glancing at Ty but keeping his attention on Amy. Ty took a step returned, jaw clenched. "I'll come up with space." As he walked away, Amy became back to Nathan, already knowing what changed into coming. "I don't want to push you," Nathan stated, his voice regular. "I know that is impossible for you, but I additionally need to understand wherein we stand." Amy sighed, searching down on the ground. "Nathan, I don't have an answer for you. Everything in my existence just grew to become upside down. I don't realize what's right anymore." Nathan's expression softened. However, there has been a deep sadness in his eyes. "I love you, Amy, and I've been inclined to wait. But I can't be the second choice." Amy's chest tightened. "You were never the second choice." Nathan let out a heavy breath. "Then tell me, if Ty hadn't come back, would we still be standing here having this conversation?" Amy had no answer, and that silence told Nathan everything he needed to know. After a moment, he nodded. "I don't want to make this harder for you, but I can't stay in limbo forever." Amy felt tears sting her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," Nathan said softly, "but sometimes love isn't enough." With one last look, he turned and walked away, leaving Amy standing there, torn between two lives, two men, and the past that refused to stay buried. Inside the house, Jack sat at the kitchen table, watching as Ty poured himself a cup of coffee. The silence between them was thick with unspoken words. Share your thoughts in the comment section and subscribe our channel for more Heartland Season 19 updates. Thank you.